It's time for Bourbon with Friends, the bourbon podcast that never takes itself too seriously. Pull up a chair, grab a glass, and remember, a bourbon with friends can change the world. Here we go.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bourbon Friends. Myself, Adrian, and Martin are here to talk about whiskeys from around the world and how a bourbon with friends can change the world. How was you guys' weekend?
Relaxing.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
I would say mine was the polar opposite. I worked Friday and Saturday night.
okay.
So,
At the Co of Edwin's.
The Edwin Co. I made a lot of cocktails. I met a lot of really great people though. The whole reason I keep going back there. I love talking to people and meeting new people, and it's great. It's a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're drinking a cocktail right now, aren't you?
I am, yes. I before we started recording, I made myself a Black Manhattan. So I had never made one. I'd had one at a restaurant before. So I decided I looked up a recipe on the Googles. And
I literally never heard of that.
Really?
I've heard of a Manhattan, obviously, but I've never heard of a Black Manhattan.
But a Manhattan's made with vermouth, which is kind of nasty in my opinion.
Yeah, well, that's what my dad does a Rob Roy, which is a Manhattan with the bourbon out or Scotch in.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so he'll do that all the time. But I'd never heard of a Black Manhattan. So
it's made with Amaro liqueur, which is an Italian liqueur. There's a couple different kinds. There's an Averna and a Montenegro, and they have different qualities. And I don't make a lot of cocktails outside of Edwin Co. So I haven't gotten to play with the different ones all that much. But yeah, it's a nice liqueur to add to things.
Nice. That's you are kind of becoming like our resident cocktail slinger.
Yeah, really. I mean,
that's you're just always making one. That's really cool. Maybe one of these days I'll actually drink a cocktail. But probably won't. It's just I can't do it.
I don't drink a lot of cocktails either. But
you don't. I know you don't, but like you do sling them.
Fun.
So
yeah.
Yeah, I just I don't know what it is. You saw me. I had a couple old fashions in the summertime, but that was the last time. And every time I go to order another one, I just don't, and I just order just regular whiskey. Just because it's too sweet by the end of it, and I agree. You can't always taste the whiskey, and that's what I want to taste. If I'm being honest,
I'm with you.
Yeah. That's why I don't understand mocktails, but I guess there's a whole community for that. But so I guess today, Brian, I feel like you're much more well equipped to do this intro than I. You have a fantastic and eclectic background in this specific thing, and I feel like you are the man for the hour, or however long we do this for.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm the man of the hour, right? We have two amazing individuals from a company called Four Branches Bourbon, Rick and Mike, who are the two of the founders and know a tremendous side of the military. Not only that, but some contract work with the government, as well as a special agent in an agency that someone else can talk about, because I am not qualified to talk about that agency whatsoever. But welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the cast.
Guys. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Oh no. Uh-oh.
It's great to have you guys here. So just to start things out, so Four Branches began as a tribute to your close friend, Greg Wright Jr., a Marine and a CIA officer who made the ultimate sacrifice in Iraq. Can you tell us about how Greg's legacy inspired the creation of the brand, and then how you see his memory living through that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Adrian. So
You're welcome.
Greg and I, the Four Branches started as a tribute, a give back, and to understand the beginnings or where we are now, you have to go back to the beginning, and that is, I went to Virginia Military Institute. I was an enlisted Marine, and then I went to VMI as a cadet there with Greg, and then we were commissioned Marine officers together, and we ran around Camp Lejeune doing what second lieutenants do, dumb things around Camp Lejeune. And I did my 2 tours in the Marine Corps on my second BBL, and I got out, and I got shortly thereafter I got recruited as a contractor into the CIA as a contractor for them. And then I recruited Greg in turn for the program that we were on. And I was home, and Greg went on his first mission 2005, 20 years ago this year, and saved everyone's life on the first night out the wire in Iraq. But he didn't come home, right? Everyone else came home, but he didn't. And I had the unfortunate honor to have to go bring him home, right? Bring him back to his mother and father and our friends, and then kind of somewhat be responsible and answer for a classified mission we're on, or he was on, part of the same unit. So that never left me. And I continued to work for the agency for a long time, about a dozen years as a contractor on and off, with some breaks in service, so to speak, for doing a few other things here and there. And then Mike, it's probably now 3 years ago, maybe 3.5, 4, I called you. I tell people, 3.5. I tell people I was driving home from the day job, right? Still got a day job. And I tell it all the time, like, look, if you hear voices in your head at this point, I'm going to tell you to run the other way. Most of them aren't good, but every now and then one comes through, and it was do a barrel bourbon for Greg and the guys in the particular unit I had the honor to be a part of. Now that unit has lost, besides Greg, they lost 5 other men at different times. Right. So it was a tribute to not only Greg and his legacy, but the men of that organization, and what we, Harold, our other partners, coined the unsung shadows. Right. Because Greg was the first to be given a star on the wall as a contractor within our organization. And that was a very big deal. And since that time, the 5 more stars have been chiseled into that marble wall. And most of the men I knew and or worked with. So that's where it started. And then with that, I called Mike and kind of told Mike what I was thinking and what we were going, hey, what do you think? And let's do this. And then the story, we grew exponentially by 2 when we called Harold, and we, a mutual friend put us in contact with RJ. I joke, everybody needs a Navy SEAL. So we're like, we know the guy, let's call Harold. But then it was to change the message. And that's kind of how we're continuing to bring the legacy, not only of Greg, but all the other men and women out there that have served in the shadows. And that message is something we believe in to our core, and I'll let Mike talk in a minute about, he had a very similar experience. So everything really aligned with what we were doing, our shared backgrounds. But that message is that everybody serves a community, whether you serve in the military, law enforcement, or government. Mothers, mothers, fathers serve community, teachers, priests, you name it. Everybody serves something. Mm-hmm. So serve honorably. It's on every bottle, right? And then if you drink, we ask that you drink honorably. That's not a replacement for drink responsibly. Still got to drink responsibly, but drink honorably means for us, and what we intended to mean is if you're the last one to come home, as soldier, sailor, airman, coast guardman, you name it, police officer, firefighter, whatever it may be, don't dishonor the memories of those that didn't make it back. More importantly, don't dishonor your own memory, because we see statistics every day, right? So we hope that gives that person, whoever they may be, pause to reflect for a minute and be grateful and not go down a path they don't come back from. And lastly, the soul of the company is that, look, we've all been drinking to forget way too long. Rather, we need to sip to remember. And that's really the soul of the company, and kind of our origin story of why I started, why I called Mike, why we all banded together like the Avengers to try and change the message in the alcohol world. And I'll let Mike kind of share his story of why our experiences are very similar.
Thank you for sharing that.
Bourbon Avengers. I hadn't heard that one yet.
We're going to wait. That's going on GoDaddy next.
Yeah.
have a mental picture of that for some reason. Like I can see these Bourbon Avengers, but you're all, I've got a Captain America.
I was gonna say, I was gonna ask who's who, if I'm being honest.
I could see everybody. Like who's the Hulk?
I was gonna say, I want someone to call out who the Hulk is. And
is that the Marines? Is that you know what I mean? Anyway.
Yeah,
we're usually a little more like the A team, if you remember that series.
Yeah. We know Mr.
That sounds a lot more
We know.
accurate. I was trying to figure out each branch, and I'm like, God, the Air Force doesn't fit in any of them.
Nah, none of those. None of those.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, Iron Man.
Iron Man will be the closest, maybe.
Yeah.
Mike will take Iron Man.
Yeah.
That's more Space Force, but we won't get into that right now.
I forgot there's a Space Force.
You're not. Yep.
That's crazy. I forgot all about them. All right,
yeah,
but
please go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Mike.
I appreciate you guys. Yeah, very similar to what Rick was saying. When he called me the same way when we called Harold, same way when we called RJ, it took about 30 seconds to even think through it. I mean, literally, we said, yep, we're all in. Let's do this. How do we do it? I don't know. So let's figure it out. Rick's first idea was to put it on Facebook and sell it on Facebook. And I'm like, I think there might be a problem with that. I can't sell alcohol on Facebook. But anyway, that's the Marine. When Rick reached out again, kind of like Rick's story, I had 10 years in the Air Force. Most of my time was overseas. I'm a little bit older. I was in Germany 4 years before the Berlin Wall came down, and then 3 years afterwards. So I was in there at a time and period when there wasn't a war going on per se. We had that 90-minute war, the first Gulf War that, I didn't get my bags packed. That thing was over already. But we were getting ready to deploy from Ramstein, from Germany, to Saudi or to Kuwait, actually, when that war ended up so quick. Anyway, so my time was a little bit different. I was with security forces in Europe. I was assigned to some protective details for generals who were under threat by the Red Army faction, if you remember that particular terrorist group back in the day. And then, ironically, I did a couple of years of undercover narcotics for the military. It was a joint group between the Army, the Air Force, and the German narcotics unit, which was quite interesting to be involved with that sort of scenario. But after coming back to the U.S., I spent a couple of years at the Air Force Security Forces Academy as an instructor. And then, kind of like Rick, I was at the halfway point of either continuing my career, and I had a sort of an Air Force padre, a lieutenant colonel, who was a good friend of mine and mentor. And he said, dude, it's either go the distance or get out now. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do next. And he had a relationship with the CIA. He had worked with them before. And I get a phone call out of the blue and said, hey, Mike, Cash said that you'd like to have a cup of coffee sometime. Literally, that's how it was. And I'm like, I don't know who you are, but if Cash, that's the gentleman's name, said this, I'll meet you for a cup of coffee. And I had a coffee with that gentleman, and 9 months later, I was in the CIA as an officer. So that's how that kind of started. And I spent 10 years at the agency. 6 of those years, I was assigned as an assistant team leader for the protection of the CIA director at the time, George Tenet. And I wore 2 hats. I wore another hat in a unit that Rick served in that we still don't talk too much about, but providing overseas security in high threat conditions. And so I would go back and forth on that. But one of my sort of moments in time, one of several, like Rick, if you're familiar with the name Johnny Mike Spann, Mike Spann was the very first American killed in Afghanistan after 9/11 attacks. So this was in November, around November 20th. Mike and the team came out of it. Mike was a former Marine officer himself, and then he worked for the CIA Special Activities Division. So they were one of the first teams in, really the team that went in before Horse Soldier, truth be told. But Mike was killed in northern Afghanistan during a prison outbreak when they were interviewing and trying to find bin Laden. And when Mike was killed, unfortunately, I was in a nearby country at the time, and I was dispatched along with his team members to repatriate him and bring him home. And we knew we were going to take him from Afghanistan to Landstuhl Hospital in Germany. That's pretty much where all the military goes to whether they're KIA or repatriated or even prisoners or the Iran hostages, as an example, they all went to Lonsdale to kind of go through their debrief and medical checks before they come back to the U.S. And because I'd been stationed at Ramstein for 6 years, they called me to go and prepare to bring Mike home. And that's as Rick can tell you, it's just a humbling few days. That's when the the rubber meets the road and what we're doing in our careers and going out and doing hard things, and then having to bring Mike home. And he had 3 kids and a baby at that time, and it was just kind of a sad moment, but that reality that sacrifice is real at that time. And to Rick's point, a lot of guys and women serve in these roles that they get zero recognition. There's not a lot of fanfare when people from the agency necessarily come home after being killed, and sometimes the agency doesn't even recognize it or acknowledge it. So this is kind of what the project of Bourbon started out at, and I know all of this is sad. It's kind of sad conversation. However, we're careful about not going too far down that. To mention another bourbon, a rabbit hole. And great name, by the way, right? So with that said, that's the background, that's the story. And then we reached out to Harold, who's like Rick said, the Navy SEAL, and RJ is a former 20-year Army Special Forces, and he's still in the reserve for the Air Force Pararescue. He's a lieutenant colonel in the pararescue. And if you know anything about that, these are the guys that jump out of birds and helicopters behind enemy lines to rescue the heroes who've gotten themselves in trouble. So these are real badasses. But that's the story. That's who we are. But with all that said, that's the sad news or the sad beginnings. But it's about really honoring those occasions in life. Those are special occasions. We won't forget, like Rick said. We'll sip to remember those occasions. But there's a whole lot more to sip to remember that's great. The birth of our children and weddings and promotions and anniversaries and so much more to remember. And I think that's what we're trying to focus on. The drinking to forget. We need to stop doing so much of that. I mean, let's sip to remember so many great things that happen in our life. So that's kind of the background.
Thank you for sharing those stories. They are sad, but they're important to share, and I'm grateful to know them. So
100%, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. I think one thing Martin is going to sip to remember is his divorce.
Thanks for bringing it up. Jesus
Christ. To be honest, you were happy about it.
Cheers.
I was like, it was like 6 years ago.
I didn't see that coming.
Hey, I think we've all got one or two of those, right?
I got one. I was like, after the first one, I'm like, I'm not.
Well,
I'm not
I got 0, thankfully, but I mean,
one or two, 2 or more.
We can take a Vegas vacation and we'll just do it over the weekend, Adrian. We'll just see how it works.
Yeah, you need a witness? I can be a witness.
I was gonna say I'll be a witness for you if you want me to.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Good for you guys.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just stay where I'm at with that one.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay. And to be fair, you guys actually sort of did answer a little bit of my next question. Just because obviously you guys have such a great experience and such great background and definitely kind of already told us what you already applied in some ways to creating this brand, but like what other lessons or kind of, I guess, disciplines, lessons, direction did you get for starting and building 4 branches? And like, really, what was that thing? Like, I think, because you mentioned it was kind of started out as just a barrel. Like, where did it go from barrel to idea? Like, we're going to start this.
Yeah, I think, well, once I quickly realized the U.S. government wasn't going to let me sell it on Facebook, which I thought was a genius idea at the time, right? I thought it would be so simple. Yeah. Get some glass, get some, I got a home printer, label, boys.
Boom,
here we go.
You can do that one time, by the way. Just so
you can pretty much get away with anything once. So
ask for forgiveness instead of permission. Isn't that the saying?
Exactly. So we I think, it was like Mike said, we didn't know what we didn't know. This is an entirely new industry. You might as well have said, "Hey guys, I want you to start brain surgery tomorrow." We'd have been like the scene out of Spies Like Us with the Mike with a scalpel and me under looking at the dictionary or the book trying to, cut here. No, cut here. No. So we decided that we could make this bigger.
Yeah.
And it goes back a little bit to a point where, I said not to go down the foxhole instead of rabbit hole this time on being too sad, but we did have a little bit of a crisis of conscience where we took a pause for about several months, where we really wrestled if we want to be a part of a industry that unfortunately men and women use to make poor decisions. Right. And we struggled with that because we've had friends and still have friends that unfortunately they think that's the only way out, right? Is to do something fatal. And that's horrible and it's got to stop. And I think it's when we realized, none of our careers have been typical by any stretch of the imagination. Right. And we didn't get to, where we are by being typical or attacking problems in a normal fashion. So we said, well, we have atypical careers. We are not used to doing things conventionally, so to speak. So that's where we said, let's change the message and let's make this bigger because we see a problem. And if we, let's not be a part of the problem, let's change the message and be a part of a new solution that can benefit everybody, not just the veteran, military, first responder community. The message can apply to everybody, and let's make it big, right? Kind of go big, go home. And we didn't really know what we were doing. And I think our very first cold call who's now a very good friend, was to one of the number one, maybe the number one, might correct me if I'm wrong, bourbon broker in the world. Guy picks up the phone. It's like I tell him a little bit of the story. He's like, in our world, we're like, everything's compartmentalized, it's secret. Hey, can we sign an NDA? It's like, yeah, I don't do NDAs. So I was like, oh, you know what? We don't do NDAs either. Yep, no NDA needed. You're right. And he invited us to his house. Mike flew in and we went to his house. Nice. And Mike, I'll let you pick up the story from there because it gets more surreal.
He spent probably 2 hours trying to talk us out of it. I'll be honest. I mean, he was like, dude, guys, you don't want to do this. This is expensive. It's hard. It's heavy regulation. He just went through all the reasons. And we're like, yep, got it, taking notes. And then at the end of it, we're like, okay, we hear you. So how do we do it? He's like, God.
He tried.
he tried. He tried. 2 hours he tried. He goes, all right, if you're going to do it, you got to do it this way. So he started outlining everything. And to Rick's point, we met, probably a few months later, all four of us, when we went back to his house, And I think that's the core, right? We come from organizations and units, and, it can be private sector, but our military or agency, if you're given a mission, as Harold would always say, it's the no-fail mission. You don't want to fail at this mission. And that's just to your point, that's what's ingrained in us. It's success, move forward, take the hill, whatever it is. There may be sometimes you get hit and you got to, fall back and come back up again. But that's just the mentality. And we're not in our 20s and 30s. We're somewhere between 51 and 64. So
I'm in my 30s.
Yeah. Only when you're drinking.
I don't think any of us here are in our 30s except for Brian.
Yeah.
Dude, good for you.
Right.
But no, you kind of assemble the team, right? You look out for who's the best and the best in this industry to help you guide it. And we didn't want to take a shortcut. That's the one thing we're pretty proud on. We don't take a shortcut. Every time we bottle 4 branches, every time we're at Bardstown Bourbon Company, who's our partner in making our bourbon, and we're tasting it. We're tasting our blend. We're making changes. Add this, as to this, as to what, and make those changes before it's bottled. And we know firsthand that's not always the case. And so we're just not willing to cut corners. And we sit at a bar, and like where I live in Arizona, and often I'll go to my local place here that serves it, and I'm always buying drinks at the bar. Last thing I want to do is them to pop a bottle and pour some stuff, and I'm like, oh, this really sucks. I can't do that. It's got to be good. Yeah. But that whole part started with, if we're going to raise a glass to the fallen, dude, it's got to be good stuff. It can't it can't be crap. And I think we all agree there's no such thing as great bourbon. I mean, great bourbon is subjective. what you may think is great. I'm like, yeah, it's a little too hot for me, or whatever. There's different opinions. I think there's definitely good and really, really good, and then there's okay, and then there's bad. There's a range in there.
A lot of bad.
There's a lot of bad sometimes, right?
A lot of
Well,
bad.
you got different palates. Everybody has a different palate, and everybody's either tried very little or tried a whole lot, but a lot of people are all the way in between. So it's a mixed bag, you know.
Oh, for sure. We tried to hit that. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. Is that we wanted to come in the middle, somewhere in a range where if you've never drinking bourbon before, but you're willing to try it, you're willing to expand your palate. You drink red wine, or you drink, tequila, but you never have had too much bourbon. Rick can tell you how many times we've done tastings, thousands now. People are like, I don't drink bourbon. We're like, just give it a try, and they'll hear their story and they'll give it a try. It's that whole peer pressure. But the number of people that drink at least our bourbon, and Rick, tell me if I'm wrong, the eyes go big and they're like, wow, that is really smooth. I thought bourbon really burned going down. I'm like, not all bourbon does. And then we get into how we make it. It's the 4 grain. There's a wheat that's in it. We're at a 96 proof, somewhere in the middle, right? Because people like a higher proof, but that's only a small percentage of people. Personally, we didn't want to come in at 80, 85. We wanted to be somewhere in the middle. We went back and forth with proof, but Brian, you get a 4-day weekend. How many hours is that?
Why are you looking at me? I don't do math. I was in the Marine Corps.
You know the holiday. What's the long holiday?
120.
No.
What?
72.
No, 72.
Close.
6.
96.
I'm just throwing out numbers.
Sorry.
Well,
I just don't know.
I had to be one of those.
I don't even know what we're talking about.
96.
You got to remember,
96
my
is a good
Marine Corps
place to
difference
land.
was they didn't tell me.
3.
They just told me go that way and do something.
Oh my God, that was funny. That was a test. So
96 is a good place to land. That now it all ties together, but no, you're right. In the 80s is a little bit too low. You start getting up in the 110s and above, and that's a select few of people, like some of the individuals that are on this podcast like those numbers, but not everyone does, and you're trying to appeal to the masses, right? So 96 is a good place to hang out.
It's somewhere in the middle. I remember, I'll mention 4-Gate Bourbon. Those are good friends of ours, and I had a sipping taste with them one time at a place in Louisville, and we're tasting a lot of 4-Gate, and that's everything they have is like 110 or above. And after 30 minutes, I'm like, dude, I am not drinking honorably right now. I need somebody to walk me back to my hotel. That was strong stuff. But
I'm not drinking honorably right now.
I am not drinking honorably.
Were you staying at the AC hotel?
Pretty close to there.
Okay. Then I know where you were at.
Yeah. But
gentlemen, let's talk about something that I'm really excited to talk about. What you guys have been doing with charity organizations and helping out several different amazing nonprofits out there. What were the challenges and milestones that you were going through to get that along, to get it moving, to make sure that your company, being that it's only been 1 year since you
April will be 2
for the charities, right?
Yeah, about 19 months, 20 months.
Yeah.
So 19 months going into this, you're trying to push that along and get these charities going. You've again raised hundreds of thousands of dollars already in 19 months of doing this. First off, how? And that's amazing. And second off, why specifically do that?
I think the why is very easy, right? This started as a give back. There was no question in any of it was never like, it wasn't even a second thought. It's like, we're doing this, but part of our ethos, part of our mandate is we're going to give back to the communities that served us and try and help make sure that those men and women, first responders and veteran military getting out or transitioning, whatever it may be, Gold Star families, that we were lucky to come home. Let's make sure that we can help those along the way. And so that has never been a question. We were all aligned on that. And then I think the how have we raised so much money? It's the message.
it's the message that resonates. I mean, when we can get up and we have a chance to share what we've shared with you here on the podcast, people, it means something to people. And it's because, I'll say it's because we're real. We lived this story. We lived what's in the bottle, so to speak. And the message, it's not a made up story. It's not any of that. It's just, and you can tell by the passion, like we believe in it, right? It means a lot to me, to Mike, to Harold, and RJ, because we've all done very similar things. So when we have a chance to tell, it connects with people. And Mike, I'll let you give the stats on how many veterans and how that spider web effect covers so many. But the why is easy because it's in our DNA, it's in our blood. We're going to give back to the communities that served us.
Yeah,
The message, and then Mike, you go ahead.
Yeah, to Rick's point, I mean, there's 18 million veterans today. Even though 1% or less serve, they serve for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, but there's 18 million veterans. And I had this conversation one time about what's the biggest community outside of male, female in terms of marketing, and we're trying to figure out how to do all this. And I challenged this 20-year plus marketing lady. I said, tell me a community that's bigger than the veteran community. And she's on her phone and she's like, well, she looked it up. She goes, 18 million. I said, okay, 18 million veterans. Those veterans have a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a husband, a wife, cousins, grandparents. And every time we do tastings, we're like, hey, did you serve? Just trying to connect. And they're like, no, I didn't, but my dad did. Or I didn't, but my grandfather did. And everybody wants to tell that connection to the veteran in their family. So this conversation with her, I said, I think that community could be 125, 150 million people that's part of this community. And then probably half veterans get out and serve in a first responder community. And that's your fireman, your police officer. So you continue to add that community. I'll challenge you to find a bigger community than a veteran first responder community as a whole. And after the end of this 2-hour conversation, and she's Googling, doing stuff, she goes, I think you're right. I can't come up with a bigger community other than male or female. So that's kind of opened our eyes to the opportunity to tell the story in more venues. And I think, to your specific question, Brian, we commit 4% of our revenue towards charity and foundation. That's cash that we submit, that we give. But we wanted to do more than that. And we kind of talked to all kinds of different companies, and it's everywhere between they give nothing or 1% or maybe 4, 5, 6% if it's a big, large company. We're not profitable yet. We're year 2, grinding, feeding this big machine. So we're committed to a bottom line, and our P&L is going towards charity and foundations. But what we found, we went to one event, and it was the aha moment. We did an event in Washington, D.C., and it's an organization that gives back to the CIA Memorial Fund and those that support that community. And to Rick's point, we were fortunate enough to give a special bottle that was etched, that was prepared in a special case to Mike Spann's dad, his sister, and his daughter on stage in front of about 3,000 people. And that was probably one of the emotional things I've had to do, because I didn't think too much other than presenting this to Allison and to her dad. And it was hard for me to get through it. Thank God I had a glass with me to kind of continue to get through it. But once we got through it and we stepped back down, they started an auction. And they were giving away a villa in Tuscany, a signed guitar, but like Eddie Van Halen, and all kinds of stuff. But wow. They started with 4 bottles of 4 branches bourbon, and one side had been signed by George Tenet, the former CIA director. The other side had been signed by Pat Moynihan, the lead singer from Train. Those 4 bottles auctioned for $66,000.
Wow.
We were less
awesome.
Less than 6 months old.
Wow.
At the time.
So after getting over that, what the hell just happened? We did another event in Stuart, Florida, where the Folds of Honor Foundation, we donated 15 bottles. They were signed by veteran chefs that were there at this event, and they were preparing food for this large audience. And Harold went down, our other partner, and 15 bottles auctioned off for $75,000. And basically, it was $5,000 for a scholarship for 15 people. So that, and we cherish that. We're not, we by no, we don't want to abuse that in any way. But when we're able to get into the right room with the right people, maybe get other people to sign these bottles that have a story. I mean, the four of us, we only sign our first name. It's not a big fancy signature. We're simple people. Randy Couture is our brand champion. He's a bit of an icon, right? He signed that.
Randy.
He signed that entire, but he's got a fantastic signature.
I'm sure he does.
He does. We take him a lot with us on events, and everybody wants Randy's
Love
signature.
that
guy. We usually take him on events just when people say, "Yeah, I'm not crazy about your taste," and we're like, we tap Randy, and he just punches you in the face. So,
yeah.
But no, we just found out that by doing some of these events, so now we donate a lot of bottles. Nice. It really is. I'm not going to say it's overwhelming, but Jen is our director of operations, and that's Rick's wife, and she gets the hits all the time. And we quickly round up and say, hey, is this an event we want to support? If we can be there physically, we will go and travel there and be there to tell the story, be part of the event, or we'll donate bottles for auction. If we can get Randy's signature on it, if we can get some other signatures on it. And there's just some really good, at the end of the day, there's some really good Americans, some patriots that have a lot of money that's like, you know what, I'm supporting this cause. I'm going to auction. I want that bottle. Yeah. We had a Navy SEAL event. There's a Navy SEAL that John Connors, who died in the Panama invasion, and his friends, his college mate, his teammates are building a statue in his honor in Massachusetts. And we went to an event there, and we had our bottle. He was on Team 4. We etched Team 4 on the side, and his team members that was with him that night he died, we etched their names or signatures on the side. It was in a special case that was created, kind of like a Macallan case. And here's again, the story just has so many different tentacles. The guy that bought that bottle, or he paid the highest, $15,000 for it. He said, I was prepared to pay $50,000 for that bottle. He said, I wasn't leaving without it. He said, I joined the Navy because of John Connors. When I saw that what he did, I joined the Navy, and then I wanted to be a Navy SEAL like John. And then he retired as a commander because of that guy. He said, I wasn't leaving without that bottle. So that stuff can drop you to your knees as founders going, holy crap, we didn't see that happening, but we're glad we're a part of it, and we'll continue to raise that kind of money for these organizations any way that we can. It's honorably.
Yeah, like Mike said, we're humbled by it, right? We're blessed that people are chosen for look at it from a big picture. We're a small craft brand that just came out. We are blessed that they've said we're going to use that, and we're using you over everyone else out there to raise the money. So yeah, I always say, Mike, like Mike says, we're humble, we're blessed, and just a little bit proud. Try and keep that one in check, because it's it is really just an amazing fact that people are gravitating towards it.
Well, let's talk about your recognition really quick on Fox News. You guys sold out in what, 2 minutes, pretty much 3 minutes online, or
it went pretty quick.
Sold a lot really, really fast.
Yeah.
Mike, you and I talked about it over the phone a while back.
Yeah.
And the numbers were something.
We learned a valuable lesson from that one, because we were we thought we were prepared.
Yeah.
When the Today Show came out.
Yeah.
And even then we weren't. We were not prepared.
Well, I love that you have events that people are auctioning off your bottles, and I mean, this is like probably something you never even planned on. And the fact that it's going to all these different, I mean, that has to be like the epic thing that came out of all of this. Like that's honoring those people more than anything else ever could. Right.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So awesome.
It
Man,
definitely
that's
makes
so
you feel
awesome.
warm about as much as drinking a little bourbon, right? You get that little warm,
Yes,
Right.
that
man.
little
It makes
warm
me
spot.
feel like it makes me feel excited, and I'm not even in the whole thing.
I know,
It's
right?
awesome.
But we do have to say thanks to the people who have purchased those auctions. Again, those are great people, and it's been men, it's been women, it's been across the board. And these are individuals that see the story, hear the story, they know the charity, the organization, and they're like, "I'll step up." Do they need a bottle of Four Branches on their bar that it cost them $10,000? No, but they're willing to do that for that organization, and that is pretty special for those people.
Yeah.
So we appreciate
Yes,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Well, Adrian, do you want to get into this?
Do we want
bourbon?
to start giving some
tasting notes?
tasting notes, nosing notes. Like, do we want to get into that? These guys here to my left and my right are very, very good at this. Me, not so much. I'm getting better. But
Don't
what
let
do
her
you think,
lie.
guys?
She's great at it.
Don't worry, Adrian. I got to be honest. Ever since Mike mentioned train, I've had drops of Jupiter in my head. So that's literally all I keep hearing in my fucking head for like the last 10 minutes. My notes might not be as good as they normally are.
That's too funny. And he killed it that night. He slayed it that night.
I just always remember he'd always come on back in the day. He always come on the Stern show, and he would just it was just him an acoustic, and he would just play all the hits and stuff like that. And he's just always been so good.
And it wasn't until he sung that night I realized how many songs he had.
Yeah,
right? I'm like, that one and that one.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, that's the thing. I'll hear them. I'm like, that was Train. And I'm just, wow. It's just one of those 90s bands. I think it came at that point where it was just there were so many of those kind of bands that the songs just sort of blended together a little bit. But they kind of stood out for me. I always remember that. I forgot to grab a Glen, so I'm out of the bottle.
That makes sense for you.
Yeah.
I don't ever see Martin drink out of the bottle though.
Sometimes I do. But
it's
not like
a lot later.
We never have. It's not like we've
Yeah.
never done that, but it's not something that you typically I've seen you do.
So when you guys are really kind of taking in the nose, and I think you know the background about what the blend is, but it is a 4-grain blend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
do you want to speak to that a little bit? Because your logo talks about 4 branches, and then so visually, physically with the mash bill, symbolically, you've united, these things. Do you want to talk about a little bit more about what each of those things means as far as that goes, and maybe what kind of a deeper message you're trying to convey there?
Yeah, I'll jump Rick in and talk about the blend a little bit, and if you want to tell them about the symbolism. But I think it really has been organic, and that's the fun part about this, right? I mean, it's not like we got a big, huge marketing company behind us. I mean, we have some really good, talented people helping us and guiding us. But just the whole concept is almost as organic as making bourbon, right? The 4-grain really came out of not so much because of 4 branches. As we began to talk about, we were really interested in a more complex bourbon, and 4-grain just started becoming something we were toying with, and we would be blending ourselves, hanging out as guys and blending a 3-grain, high rye or high wheat, and kind of doing our own blending and working with some stuff. And we just kept coming up with the 4-grain is really working for us. And then when we went out to Bardstown and we spent time with Steve Nally, and I think maybe you guys would know his name, but for your listeners, Steve Nally was Maker's Mark Master Distiller for more than 20 years. And he went out to High West and started High West, and he came back to Bardstown Bourbon Company, and he's been with them now for about 8 to 10 years. And he's in the Bourbon Hall of Fame. He's literally the kindest gentleman you've ever met, and he's just a bourbon legend. But we work with him and Dan Calloway and Justin Willett, and we spent some time at Bardstown trying to perfect this blend. And the true story was we were working with Justin and Dan, and the guy said, "Hey, Steve's going to come in and just say hi real quick, and hi and goodbye. Just wanted to meet you guys." But he came in, and we were just kind of doing what 4 guys from 4 different branches doing, right? We're kicking each other and kind of having fun. And Steve was like, "What's y'all's story? Who are you guys?" So we told him a story, and then he kind of went on the other side of the bar, and he rolled his sleeves up, and he said, "Let's make some bourbon." And we're like, "Holy cow!" It's almost like if you were in church and the Pope walked in and wanted to talk to you about something, you'd be like, "Holy crap!" So it was just kind of a special moment to have a legend, to have a master honestly sit there, and we went through different levels of blending what we wanted until we landed on this. So this would be, if we were going to put it into a barrel, it's about a 65 corn, 15 rye, 10 barley, 10 wheat. That kind of gives you that 4 grain. You got enough. You're on that low end of a high rye at 15. You're low end, but you're in that space. So when you have that first sip, you're going to get that peppery, cinnamony pop. You're going to feel that. We wanted you to know you're drinking bourbon. Sometimes it's kind of too watery.
It definitely has a bourbon feel for sure. It's definitely a bourbon. Yeah.
So we wanted that, but we were trying to work on what would eliminate some of that heavy burn going down, because some bourbons will really burn you going down. And I think it's a combination of the 4 grain and the 96 proof. That combination provides it the complexity. Obviously, because you got 4 grains, you got a lot more sort of taste profiles and nose profiles, and even my wife has begun to cook with it. I mean, she makes a banana bread with a cream cheese frosting.
God, yeah. Man, it's so good, right?
I did not see that coming.
That recipe.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming. She makes some other things that's unbelievable with
desserts.
This.
Wow.
And desserts and bourbon are one of those things that eventually, when you have too many bottles, like, what do I do with?
I have a piece
and you
of
just start
chocolate.
cooking with it.
I have a piece of dark chocolate waiting to have with my whiskey tonight. So
it's good.
Real.
I mean, during the summer, there's a thing that my brother-in-law and I always do, like, because I always bring over. I've got a few bottles here, and I got a few. So I'll bring something new over, like, because he's not like a big whiskey guy, but he enjoys it and he likes trying new stuff. So we'll always do it like where we'll try the whiskey, and then later in the night, my sister always ends up making like ice cream or something. We'll dump the bourbon over the ice cream just to see how that like kind of pairs with it. And it's always so good. It's a super simple treat, but it's so good. Those two flavors are amazing. So I can agree that any kind of dessert with whiskey is good.
I had never thought about that before. I got to be honest. Until she started playing around with it, and she makes an apple compo.
Yeah,
it's kind of like an apple sauce, a lot of cinnamon, and she'll grill pork chops, and she'll have an apple compo. We'll put some bourbon on it, and oh my God, it's
so good.
It's amazing. That's a whole new. We have actually a Michelin star chef who's one of our investors and on board. So we've got a few chefs that are part of this.
Yeah.
So we want to come out with some other stuff. So.
Yeah, there's I know, like,
Mike. Thank you. This is great. Now I'm hungry.
I know, right? All right, so
I'll let you guys tell us what you feel. What you
So what's the notes you guys are getting?
Hold on.
Let's hear it.
Do you have them pulled up?
Do I have them pulled up? I
like
don't know if there's
their
any,
official notes.
Do you guys have tasting notes on your website?
I'm assuming
we do. Yeah. But it's funny, right? Because if I give you a note, you may find it. I find it. People go, "Oh, yeah, I get that," but yet
it's subjective on what you're doing.
Okay, yes, they have a on the nose, a mouth, and a finish. So let's rip on this. Let's see what you guys got.
Well, it's definitely. I mean, I always like, and again, I'm going to assume that the traditional bourbon notes are there because they are, of course, vanilla, oak.
I'm guessing caramel.
Stuff
like that.
The ones that I will say,
you got 2 others you got to get.
Yeah,
there's definitely like it's like syrup, maple. Maybe a little bit of like orange, but like it's like the peel, not the rind.
Ding, ding.
I get it.
You got 3 of them.
Oh my gosh, are they so good?
I'm getting like toasted vanilla beans. Something that I've really missed for a long time was like an orange blueberry crumble that I used to make, and then like hints of cinnamon on top.
Yeah. You got cinnamon on there. You guys got them all. You guys did it. I felt like it's a very light, it's a very refreshing bourbon. And I know this is going to sound way off, but I thought of baby's breath when I was smelling it. I don't know why.
Wow.
I know that's so weird, right?
That's the first one.
Haven't heard. Yeah, we got to write that one down. Baby's
not an
breath.
actual baby, Martin.
Just asking. I was wondering.
I knew where you were going.
Sorry.
Not an actual baby.
I was
Sorry
wondering
about that.
Okay, that's why I had my hand. I had my hand raised, as you saw.
Question.
I needed to clarify that.
Like the plant, it's a flower.
Because Samson's like 15, so I was like, I didn't know. It's not your.
He's talking about my son. So
you guys had a great.
My kid is grown, but yeah.
Mike, do you remember that one reviewer that said something like, I know I'm going to get it wrong, like wet cat soaked in diesel.
Oh, that's very nice.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Are you talking about JP8?
I'm not mentioning the name of it. I won't do that.
No, I was talking about the actual gasoline that we used in the military.
Yeah, I was like, well, that is the only time I've ever heard that analogy of how our bourbon smells.
I've never had
thousands of tastings.
We did have somebody.
Say wet cat. I would never say that.
No,
not at all.
I don't even know what that smells like.
It's a very nice smell. A wet cat is not a nice smell.
No, I would imagine so.
Not even a wet cat soaked in diesel.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You may need to report him or put him on a list.
Yeah, I don't get that.
We did have somebody one time mention he picked up. I won't mention his name. Cracker Jacks. That's an interesting description. He said Cracker Jacks, and I'm like,
yeah, caramel.
Well, yeah, and obviously there's cereal notes to that. You know what I mean? That you can get out of that grain. Yeah, of course. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I was a little offended when he said it, but I left that location. I stopped by a store. I picked up Cracker Jacks, and I went to our hotel, and I'm tasting our bourbon and Cracker Jacks, and I'm like, damn,
it was
pretty.
That's right.
I was gonna say it probably goes together pretty good, really. Caramel corn with bourbon. That sounds amazing.
All right, Martin, what are you getting off the mouth or the finish, the taste?
Palate almond, like strong, because I don't know if it's. I was eating almonds earlier, so that might be it. But it also is actually got notes, but I buy these almonds. You guys know them, and they're in that blue thing, but they're honey roasted almonds, and so I'm getting that. More not just like your standard almonds. It's like there's like a dusting of sugar and everything like that. I love 4 grain because the thing is, I feel like a lot of times in mash bills that, and I don't know why, I guess it is what it is, but that wheat's left out. And I love, personally, I'm a big wheated fan. I like rye as well, but I feel like when you add that wheat in, it so rounds off some of the sharper elements of things like rye. Mm-hmm. That can be very spicy and can be very minty and can be very almost like astringent in some of its quality, but that wheat just rounds, it has that creaminess, just really will round that out, and that's what I'm getting. I think that's where I'm getting the almond from. I'm
getting the opposite. I'm getting hazelnut.
Are you?
We've had hazelnut a lot. Hazelnut a lot.
Yeah,
so I can see that. Yeah,
hazelnut almost. Almost
the
like a
mouthfeel on the website shows a blend of hazelnut, creamy maple, and cinnamon infused orange. Which Martin, you brought up the maple in the nose, so that kind of makes sense.
I was actually going to say that toasted. What are those called? You get at the stadiums, the hazelnuts that are covered in cinnamon.
Well, they're almonds, I think.
Yeah, they're almonds.
You can get hazelnuts now too.
Damn, progressive as hell. They're really including all the nuts nowadays. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm typically not a big wheated person, but if there's a wheat in a 4 grain, obviously a 4 grain is typically got wheat in it. Mm-hmm. I'm more inclined to that as opposed to a 3 grain that's wheat, barley, corn, with no rye. I do like the 4 grain, so it's very good.
And then you can get all crazy and have some of those 6 grains where they add in oats and stuff like that, which gets really, really interesting.
We're not going down that path. We're not going to become 6 branches.
I was going to say, who you had?
No, I had a friend.
You can bring Space Force back in.
I was going to say, I had a friend tell me there's 6 branches.
I will tell you.
What's your opinion on that?
Yeah,
I will tell you this. This is
okay, I know. I thought the same thing.
It's not my politician's answer. It's just my.
Okay.
I want to know
your answer. I want to know
my answer is. We say 4 branches. You pick your branch.
There you go.
Okay. I like that.
You
That
pick your
sounds good
branch
to me.
because it's
That
not
sounds
about
good to me.
us. It's about you. You pick the branch that you want to be a part of.
That's awesome.
We were actually with the commander of the Space Force at an event, and he was like, "Hey, when is Space Force going to be on there?" And we were kind of joking. I said, "I tell you what, when you guys get your first Purple Heart, and it wasn't for a paper cut, when it wasn't for a paper cut, we're going to put a star right up here."
Yeah, like right there.
Well, I told him when
you guys go to space.
I told him when we put
I
our
know.
first barrel in space, we would call that release Space Juice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Okay.
yeah.
I had someone
you gotta
tell
put the
me
barrel up there.
actually there's 6 branches of the military, and I was like, and what are those 2 other branches? You know, I know that was probably horrible of me to say, but you know, I'm thinking like, help me out here. Like, what's going on? And they're like, well, the Coast Guard. And I'm like, okay, I understand the Coast Guard. Like, I get that. I did not realize
Coast Guard got a long, rich
now.
Yeah, they got a long, rich history. They got a long, rich history. Yeah, they definitely. Every time we make this pledge, when the 4 of us are together, our very first pour, we toast the Coast Guard. That's a ritual for us.
Is that really?
No,
I love
for sure.
that.
No, they're part of us. I mean, the Coast Guard flies in a time of war. They fly under the Navy flag.
Yeah.
During peacetime, they're under Homeland Security.
Okay.
So they're just different, but they're part of the 4 branches under the Navy flag. So they're part of us. I have been stationed with a lot of Coast Guard guys and gals, and they're great people. They really are. I mean,
I have a girlfriend who was in the Coast Guard, so I can attest. So
I think the first KIA, I may be wrong, somebody may challenge me, but I think the report was the first KIA in Vietnam was a Coastie. And it's a long story, but Coast Guard deployed to Vietnam. I mean, they were on the Delta in their boats. They're great on boat teams. But it was a friendly fire, I believe. And the very first KIA was a Coastie. But anyway, Coast Guard got a long history. This year is the 250th anniversary of the Army, the Navy, and the Marines. And Coast Guard is not too far behind. And I was the Air Force guy, and we didn't come along until 1947. Yeah.
I love that. I just learned so much just now. I'm so thankful that you guys are like enlightening me.
It's the bourbon. It's the bourbon.
The bourbon's doing
it. It is. It's gotta be. It's gotta be.
Well, we're gonna throw a little. We actually this is actually a fantastic segue since we were just talking about the nut varieties. We do. It's a setup. That's a setup, isn't it?
I'm not sure quite where this is going.
So sorry. I'm gonna stop laughing.
Not that type of nut. You're fine.
So we have one question that we always like to ask, because we could go down a rabbit hole in nerdy mash bills and equipment, and I do love doing that, and we will likely do that, but and we have been doing that. But what we like to do is split things up and have a kind of a fun question that is not necessarily to do with whiskey, but always has a little bit of a theme there. So when we first started, we are not the original hosts of Bourbon with Friends. We actually started almost a year ago. It's actually I think our year is next month will be next week. So this month, April.
Oh wow.
Would have been our first episode. Yep. Yeah. And then on that when we were thinking of when we were prepping, like, how do we do this? What the hell? What do we do for podcasts? What do we say to people? Like, what did they used to do? What do we want to do? Well, while we're doing this, Adrian got a phone call, and in this phone call, she answered, and it was Geico. And you guys know that the Geico, the mascot for Geico is a gecko.
Yeah.
Not today. Today it was a squirrel, and it was calling Adrian to talk about insurance, and none of what I'm saying is true. So basically, guys, every episode I tell some fake story about a squirrel. I include a squirrel. And there is a squirrel themed question
or something.
Yeah. So there's been many things that Adrian's had to deal with different squirrels in her life, but now you guys get to deal with a really random off the wall question about a squirrel. But that's usually how we intro it. I make up a lie about squirrels and Adrian.
That was a good one. I like that.
Wow.
I don't know where it came from.
We really don't know where it came from.
I might have to have a little more of this.
Yeah, I think it had something to do with this for sure.
Yep, take a couple more drinks before you answer this question.
All right.
Those hazelnuts, man.
Picture this. A curious squirrel sneaks into your warehouse, discovers your best barrel, and starts drinking out of it. Do you treat it as a furry little trespasser that you need to do counterintelligence tactics and movements on it to make sure it goes away? Or does it become your little mascot that knows where your best barrels are at and can find them and help you sell them?
Mm-hmm.
Mascot all day long.
Okay.
Wow. Until you went that way.
That was fast. That was fast.
Until you said he could find the barrels, I was going to say we're going to close on the enemy with live fire maneuver and close combat to take him out.
There you go. There's a Marine.
I was going right down the Marine road. Yeah. But now you say you can find the barrels. I'm going to treat him as an asset. He will get fresh walnuts for every barrel he picks out. That's a winner.
There we go.
Yeah.
There you go.
He's damn squirrel
an
now.
asset. Yeah. He's going to become my super squirrel.
I was going to say, you're going to get applications from squirrels now. You're just like...
No,
you never know what squirrels.
Jesus.
You never know what they can bring.
You have to name it Rocky. That's all we ask.
Rocky.
You name it Rocky, okay?
Yeah.
1, because Rocky and Bullwinkle. 2, because my name's Adrian, and the squirrel story is usually about me, and we all know Rocky is my better
Holy
half.
shit.
There we go.
That's what we're
You
going to
have
name him.
one of those?
I have one.
What is that?
And
Yes,
he lost
I do.
it.
Uh-oh.
Nope.
He's back.
We got you. You're good.
Squirrel knocked his phone over and ran away.
Yep. Yeah, I got one of those for the kids when they went to HQ.
That makes sense.
Nice, man.
Nice.
All right. Well, this kind of actually, hold on. Sorry, Adrian, you're next.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So looking forward to what you guys have coming in the future. Do you foresee building a distillery? Do you see new expressions in your future? Talk about your future for Four Branches.
Definitely.
What you can share.
Rick can jump in too, but definitely expressions. I mean, here's the thing, right? I mean, I think part of this is there's a business aspect to this, and that is making sure that the business is solid and successful. And I think we have some really great advisors. That we've got 4, 5, 6, 7 people behind us as advisors that are all, ironically, retired Brown-Forman folks. So they bring a ton of experience. And good thing we got them, because we call them our instrument panel, because 4 of us knuckleheads, we would take off in different direction. We might have 10 expressions out right now, right? And they'd be like, dude, you can't do that. You know, we get phone calls from guys, friends of ours, like, hey, you know, the veteran communities in every state. And they're like, when you come to Texas, when you come to Pennsylvania, we're like, hey, we're going to work on that next week. And we'll get in touch with our advisors. And they're like, no, you're not. You're not going. You can't go that fast. So what I'm getting to is, you know, we put heavy emphasis on assembling a team of really smart people and letting them guide us a little bit on our vision, but yet putting some structure to it based on what helps us to be successful. The last thing we want to be seen as a failed group of veterans starting a bourbon business. We don't want to be seen like that. So we got to be real careful that we tread lightly in different sort of paths. Are we going to build a distillery? I can probably tell you, and Rick, I think, agree with me. I don't see that in our history.
Okay.
That would be another podcast.
Yeah.
I feel bad.
We'll have you on in a year, and we'll see if anything's changed.
You know, can I pick up a really good distillery for a good price in a few years?
Probably.
Because I think industry, we feel there's way too many distilleries being built. We'll see what happens. And it's just, that's another charter, right? And you're seeing a lot of distilleries get into really focused contract distilling. That we don't have to build a distillery. You know, we've got everything. We go to Bardstown Bourbon Company and we'll wave their flag. We walk in like we're one of them. I mean, they have treated us great. We know everybody. We go to the offices. We hang out. We have access to what they have access to, and they have been really great. So my thinking to my mind is, why would I spend $50 million building a distillery when there's already one there that's doing everything we need right now?
Exactly.
Would we look for a great place for a tasting room?
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Nice.
Could you see us partner with a big distillery that might be interested in our sort of portfolio of bourbons when they don't have it. Maybe. So there's a smarter way to go about it. So right now it's really listening to our customers tell us on a not 3 or 4, but more masses kind of what they would like to see next. And we kind of take those notes and go back and we look at our bourbon supply, and we go to our bourbon brokers, and we go to Bardstown. We've laid down 500 barrels of our own stuff, but you can't touch that for 4 or 5 years, really.
Yeah.
We're not putting 2 and 3 year in. So from a business perspective, for us to lock up $500,000 in barrels we can't touch in 4 or 5 years, it's kind of a head scratcher. So, but innovation on new flavor profiles. We had our first one come out last year, was our Black Ops, and that was that was a 21 rye, 9 year that we finished in Caribbean rum cask.
Ooh,
that one
had any behind me. I don't.
That one is yummy.
Nice.
That one is yummy. I can tell you, that one's one you pour in a glass and you let set for about 20 minutes and air out. It is really, really good.
Yeah.
The problem is you can't find it anymore.
We sold out in like a few weeks.
Yeah,
I love the idea of a tasting room because with your guys' motto, sip to remember, I think you could really expand on that in a tasting room, right? You could have something where you honor specific people each week or each month. You said you have stars chiseled into a marbled wall. You could have something like that honoring individuals. I think a tasting room in this kind of setting and this kind of, as you mentioned, 18 million veterans, and then everybody that comes along with that, I think it would really be a great place for people to quote sip to remember. I think that sounds incredible.
And I think nowadays too, and I mean, people just want to, especially with the growing craft scene, people want to see the stories, right? But they also want to sit there with it. Like I enjoy going to bars. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm a frequenter of bars, but like I love going to distilleries. I love going to tasting rooms. I mean, I don't always necessarily even need the distillery experience. There was when I was in Colorado, I used to go to there was distilleries that do like little pop-up shops in random places, and they would just have like a quick tasting for like 2 weeks or something like that, or it'd be there for a month. And I mean, even that was cool to go out, shake the hands of the people who are making the stuff, talk about their stories. Like just even having that experience is what to me makes this whole whiskey thing awesome, because it feels very unique. But yeah, I don't always need like a full-on distillery tour. You know what I mean? Like I mean, and to be fair, I've gone on so many at this point. Right? They're pretty. Once you've seen one, you've kind of seen all of them.
The process is the same for the most part, right?
Agreed. Yeah. That's why I say, your sip to remember motto, and being able for families even to be able to come and honor the people that have passed or whatever it might be, even people who are still living, to honor these people. It gives people a place to gather, and I think that would be really cool.
Well, it's about creating that safe space to come in and have conversations and whatever it is. And as veterans, sometimes we need to be among our own folks to have conversations. But the beauty of that is when you have others that maybe didn't serve, but their family members did, and you can sit in the same room and have these conversations. That's why I can't wait to get up and meet Ryan up at the 10th Mountain. To your point, we all kind of make it the same sort of way. There's some nuances, and then maybe the weather factor of how it ages over time and certain things for sure. But we always say when we walk through a rick house, it's not that we think about the bourbon that's in the barrels. This may sound cheesy, but it's true. We think about the stories that are in those barrels.
Yes.
With every barrel, there's 200, 150 to 230 some odd bottles. And I think about all the times that people sit around a bottle pouring glasses like we're doing and having conversation. There are thousands of untold stories in each one of those barrels. And that is, to me, that's what it's about. Bourbon is a reflective spirit that allows you to think of the past and remember certain things and have those conversations and share. And that's why we say sip to remember,
Absolutely.
And that's why we chose bourbon, right? You couldn't do this with, hey guys, let's grab the bottle of gin and sit around the fire pit.
I'll be like, you know what, man, I can't make this fire. I might have to go to the next
one. Exactly. We kind of,
unless you're British may be, they may do that.
They may like it. Yeah,
I
they may
mean,
like it.
there's a place for gin. There's a place for gin, but
100%.
not around the campfire telling stories.
Exactly. You're just not going to sit down and do it. It doesn't come
it's not happening.
Although I did just recently have a gin and finished whiskey, gin and finished bourbon, which was interesting. So, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
I was going to say, was it good?
It was okay.
Yeah, but you just said it wasn't as bad, right?
Yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't good.
It was
you know
bad,
what?
right?
It's not.
You have that 4 separations that you guys were talking about, but let's not get into that. Let's get into our last question. This is our favorite question of the night, and there's a specific reason for this. Each one of us has a line that we've always had or a memory that we've always had. I'm going to allow Martin to go a little bit farther in depth with this. So I don't ruin it, but it's just something I want to make sure we're getting into.
And so obviously we have the goofy squirrel question, and we like to have fun with that. But this is probably one of our favorite, just because I think it's kind of what we set out to do, is talk with people, talk with our friends. It's Bourbon with Friends. But one of the greatest things that we kind of did, and we did this on our first episode, was find out our own personal whiskey memory. There's got to be that. Not necessarily even a starting point, but there's got to be something that likely put you on this path in general. It could have been a story from that you were drinking with friends. It could be a story drinking with your old man. It could be with having one with your kid when they turn 21. Whatever it is, there's got to be that whiskey memory or spirit memory. It doesn't necessarily have to be whiskey, but if it is, all the better. So each of you, what was your favorite whiskey memory of all time?
I have one that pops into me while Rick's thinking, but for me, my family's got a pretty long military history, and not that anybody was, generals or anybody specifically famous, but I had my 3 times great grandfather was in the Civil War. And my grandfather was in World War I. He was gassed in Germany, mustard gas, and when he came home, had a heart condition from it. He died when my dad was 10 years old, and my dad joined the Army during the Korean War at 17, and he went to the Korean War for 2 years. And my son followed my footsteps, and he was in the 2nd Gulf War, and he had 10 follow-on tours in Afghanistan, Iraq, and still does good things for our country. But when I was growing up, I joined the military about 20, and by the time I left home, my dad, he really stopped drinking beer probably when I was younger. So I'd never seen my dad drink, really. And he always smoked cigars, but he didn't drink. And when I went to Germany, I was stationed in Germany, and he came over, he and my mom, right before we left. And I was probably 27 at the time. And we toured Germany, and we were down in Bavaria. And we were sitting down having schnitzel, and it was a cold winter night. It was just a great night in Germany, if you've been there before. And I said, you want a whiskey? And Dad was like, yeah, let's do that. So we had scotch. We had scotch whiskey.
There you go.
We were sitting at the table in this old German inn eating schnitzel, and I was just having a glass of whiskey with my dad. And yeah, that's just that's the memory right there.
I love that. That's awesome. Thank you.
And unfortunately, I lost him about 20 years ago. So he's been gone for a while now. But my mom just passed away 3 months ago. And a couple months, we're getting ready to join her. We're going to join her with my dad on their anniversary in the Veteran Cemetery here in Arizona. So we'll put them back together again. But that memory definitely goes back. It's burned in my mind.
I love that.
That's awesome.
Mine's very similar. So growing up, we didn't drink. My dad was from South America, so scotch was the drink. He was Venezuelan.
Okay.
So a lot of scotch. So it was always, as a kid, even I can remember 10, 11, 12, probably not supposed to be doing it. Hey, go fix me a drink, 3 fingers, ice, scotch, done. Do that. Then, as both young men and fathers do at some point, you kind of grow apart. And you have your falling outs, and because you know more than they do, and you think you know the world, et cetera, et cetera. And then you realize, the old man actually knew a few things, or wow, he got a lot smarter as I got older. So we had we were kind of estranged for a little bit. That's not probably too strong a word. Just not very close. My mother passed away when I was very young, so we weren't very close. And then I had bought a cabin after one of my deployments. I decided to buy 100 acres in the middle of nowhere in Missouri. It was my fortress of solitude, and he wanted to come and see it. And it was the first time that we'd actually, I was like, hey, similar to Mike, I was like, Dad, let me grab it. I'd already bought a bottle of Johnny Walker Black, poured the mixture, had a beautiful deck that overlooked a 15, 20 acre pond in northern Missouri. And we sat on the back deck and we just reconnected. We listened to the crickets, and it was a warm summer night, and we just connected. And that will be my fondest memory because, he's probably, 3 or 4 years after that, or not even that, maybe a year after that, he passed away. Wow. So he never got to meet my his grandkids, my boys. He met my wife once. So the connection at the cabin, having a drink,
absolutely,
will always be there.
Yeah. Let's cheers to memories.
That's a sip to remember.
Sip to remember.
It's a sip to remember.
There we go. All right, everybody. No matter where you're at in the world, remember, a bourbon or whiskey with friends can change the world. We appreciate it, gentlemen. Have a great day or night wherever you're at. Thanks, y'all.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers,
Cheers,
guys.
everyone. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Bourbon with Friends. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. While you're at it, leave us a review to make it easier for others to find the show. You can also check us out on Instagram at BWF Podcast. Thanks for listening.